Hello, and thank you for joining us during one of our initial sessions of All Energy Decarbonised webinar series. I am Peter Blore, the Events Director, and we are delighted that so many of you have taken the time to join us here today on what would have been the original dates and the 20th anniversary of the All Energy Decarbonised exhibition and conference at the SEC in Glasgow. Now, unfortunately, we could not be together at the venue this week. However, we are tremendously excited to bring the renewable and low carbon energy community closer together with the launch of our new webinar series, which we are very pleased to announce will be running monthly, bringing our community closer together throughout the year and delivering high quality content to stimulate inspiration, new connections and innovation within the industry. Now, throughout the series, we encourage you to ask questions directly to our speakers who will be responding back to you, to actively engage in the live polls during our webinars as they provide our presenters with vital industry feedback. We would also like you to approach us if you're interested in speaking during future sessions and have an interest in sponsoring the webinar series, or would like to obtain more information regarding attendance at our All Energy Decarbonised exhibition and conference later this year. After our webinars, we will be sending out a post-webinar survey and would highly appreciate your feedback. A special thank you must go to our sponsor, the Scottish Government, alongside our three chairs, Matt Smith, Nigel Holmes and Dr. Keith McLean, who have been instrumental in delivering our initial sessions in this series, alongside our brilliant speakers who have taken their valuable time to join us. Being our 20th anniversary, I would also like to provide a special mention and thank you to the All Energy co-founder Judith Patton, because without her starting the event all those years ago and continually sourcing excellent content and connections, we would not be here together today. Lastly, and during these unprecedented times, I would like to finish by wishing you all and your family good health and well-being. We very much look forward to meeting you all again soon, face-to-face in the near future. I will now pass you over to our chair speakers, so please enjoy the content and engage. Thank you once again for joining us.
You're now live. Good afternoon and welcome to the All Energy Decarbonised Hydrogen and Fuel Cell session. At the last count, there were over 900 registrations from Scotland, UK, Europe and across the globe. Warm welcome to all of you. My name is Nigel Holmes and I head up the Scottish Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Association. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Judith Patton and the team at Reed Exhibitions for organising this series of webinars, including today's session on hydrogen and fuel cells. As context, Scotland's set a target for net zero by 2045, with hydrogen featuring in plans for rapid decarbonisation of heat, industry and heavy-duty transport. We will hear about progress with transport fuel cell applications from Nicolas Pocard of Ballard Power Systems, who is joining us from Vancouver. It's 5:30 in the morning, so cut him some slack if he falls asleep halfway through. Hydrogen from heat from Mark Crowther of Kiwa UK, from sunny Gloucestershire. And this will be complemented by insights from Mirela Atanasiu from the FCH-JU in Brussels about the role of hydrogen in the new Green Deal, and from Dr. Kerrian Adamson of Vision from here in Edinburgh on the priorities for post-COVID economic recovery. So we now have an opportunity to pivot towards sustainable energy and transport solutions, not just in Scotland, but also UK, Europe, and across the globe. Projects such as Big Hit from the Orkney Islands show hydrogen not only as a key enabler for the local energy system approach, but also for local economic stimulus and growth. Learning by doing will be a theme throughout the session. Big Hit was just one of the blueprints used to develop the Hydrogen Valley approach. But as an example, the 90 million euros FCH-JU supported Heaven project in the North Netherlands is their first Hydrogen Valley and is expected to leverage up to 2.8 billion euros of regional investment into the North Netherlands by 2030. The Scottish Government and Scottish Enterprise are currently carrying out the hydrogen assessment, which will be used to inform Scottish policy and develop a supporting hydrogen action plan. This will consider the opportunities for Scotland's plentiful resources of wind and water, it can be rainy up here, to produce cost-effective green hydrogen at very large scale, as well as the opportunity to help existing supply chains and jobs, enabling the new low-carbon energy system as part of the wider just transition. So, our first audience question should now be going live. You have the opportunity to poll and to give us your opinion. So the question is, do you think Scotland is well positioned to be a significant exporter of clean hydrogen? Hopefully you've had the chance to consider the question, put your vote in. And I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce our first speaker of today. Mirela Atanasiu is Head of Unit at the Fuel Cells and Hydrogen Joint Undertaking of the European Commission. The SCH-JU is the 1.2 billion euro public-private partnership between European industry and the European Commission. The SCH-JU has supported many key projects which are contributing to the scale-up and wider deployment of hydrogen and fuel cells, including the 20 million Aberdeen hydrogen bus fleet and the 10 million Big Hit project in the Orkney Islands of Scotland. Mirela, over to you.
Thank you very much, Nigel. Thank you very much to the audience. I'm really delighted to be today and to talk about, very shortly, in fact, about the achievements of the GU. Otherwise, there will not be enough time today to talk about that. So I'm going to just take a small snapshot, and I will today focus more into the future and how hydrogen could play a role indeed into the plans at EU level, Green Deal, but also somehow a bit of a reflection on a post-COVID recovery plan. We all know the ambition of the existing European Commission, and I just chose today to quote the President of the Commission, telling us that the European Green Deal is our new growth strategy, and it will help us cut emission while creating jobs. Complemented very, very well and more precisely by the Vice President Timmermans when talking about the Green Deal and telling us that the Green Deal, it should be a green and inclusive transition to improve people's well-being and secure a health for generations to come. If we just look at, I mean, these are main messages. But if we look more deeply into the communication and the roadmap back in December, we see hydrogen and fuel cells in all the measures that to implement the Green Deal. Through the need for climate and resource frontrunners, and there already the Commission identified the clean hydrogen fuel cell and other alternative fuels, including the contribution of this technology to energy storage. Also, the intention to continue working in partnership with the industry and member states in the EU, but not lately to focus on the regulatory framework for the energy infrastructure through smart grids, hydrogen networks, of course, energy storage, and ultimately sectoral integration. We also know the ambition of our industry, on the other hand, and from the study, the hydrogen roadmap in Europe study that the joint undertaking performed last year with our industries, the vision by 2030 and by 2050 is very ambitious, and it's linked somehow to the vision of the Hydrogen Council back in 2018. And just to pick up on the 2050, in addition to or besides the carbon dioxide abatement, the deployment of hydrogen technology should cut also local emissions, about 15% in NOx, but also could create new markets and secure the sustainable employment in EU with a lot of millions of jobs estimated by 2050. Now, just quickly, who are we to talk about this? The joint undertaking, it's a strong public-private partnership, and it's the only one in the EU addressing the hydrogen technologies. Of course, it's an institutionalized partnership, meaning that it has autonomy. It's under the lead of the industry, and it's a partnership between the European Commission representing the European Union, the Hydrogen Europe Research representing the stakeholders industry grouping with more than 130, 150 companies, with the beauty of our sector being almost 50% small and medium enterprises. And on the other hand, from the research side, more than 70 institutions, all important representative academia and research organization in Europe. So far, we have been established in 2008, and so far in almost, I have to say now in May, 12 years, we have supported 263 projects for almost $1 billion public funded, and at least the same amount from private side in the project, in the 263 projects. In addition, we also look at the leverage that we have created through private investment to the projects that we are supporting. And in this aspect, I can say that so far, in fact, the leverage is even bigger. While in our project it's a one-to-one private-public, in the private investment, in addition to the project, we are reaching a 1 to 3, €1 public investment to €3 private investment. Our program has supported 263 projects across different sectors. We are addressing from the energy side, we are looking at hydrogen production mainly through water electrolysis. We look at the storage of hydrogen, but also using hydrogen for energy storage, including renewable energy integration. But we also look at the fuel cell for heat and cooling as a solution for cogeneration. On the transport side, we started with the road vehicles, mainly with the cars, with the buses. We've had also some projects on material handling vehicles when we think about the non-road applications. But the associated refilling infrastructure, hydrogen refilling stations, all the research associated to the components for hydrogen refilling stations, but also to the next generation of buses, for example. And now we are moving more and more into the heavy duty applications in the transport side. And we have here, as an example, the maritime, the aviation, but I can also mention the trucks or the trains. We also look at all the aspects when we talk about the cross-sectoral integration cross-cutting aspects, meaning the regulatory framework, the regulations, the standards, the pre-normative research to contribute into new standards or modifying the existing standards. We look at the safety. We look also at preparing the workforce, for example, for tomorrow, with a lot of training type of development of different training materials, but also curricula for education from university for specialized curricula, but lately even going to the primary and secondary school. Just as I said, I promise not to talk much about what we've done in the last 12 years. I think it's more than evident that we have reached our goals, and there is still work to do. But I chose to show what we are proud of, the fact that with our support in the last 12 years, EU is a world leader in electricity system. I just gave, without showing the numbers, I just gave the reference to this tools for innovation monitoring system and database, which shows that in EU we have most of the patents and publications in electrolysis. So if we don't believe that, at least by the numbers. We started, as I said, more than 12 years ago, but the first project in electrolysis started in 2011 and started low, 150 kilowatts. And if we have to look through the timeline, we went to the megawatt in 2014, and then as we went to 16, 17, we increased to 2, 3, 4 megawatts for the different sectors, going from even food sector, like the project demo for grid in Austria, to the steel, to the 6 megawatts in Linz, project H2 Future, 10 megawatts in Germany, project Refine for refinery, and now lately we just started this, but in the northern Netherlands, somehow coupled with the Hydrogen Valley there. Associated to that, another example that I wanted to show today is how we support policy development, or we provide feedback or input into the policy. And for some time, for a few years already, we started to develop an EU-wide guarantees of origin scheme for hydrogen, coupled somehow with hydrogen certificates, which are required for renewable gases in the RED II Renewable Directive of the European Commission. And we started well, I believe, because with the RED II already last year, Commission has confirmed that we need to have such a guarantee of origin scheme and certificate in place. And our pilot of last year, in only a month and a half, already demonstrated that more than 70,000 guarantees of origin could be issued. I just presented here, without getting into the details, the 4 different pilot plants we have used for testing the scheme. And I can tell you that right now we are working, and we just published recently the tender to continue working on that, to expand this guide. We are now working to implement into the Implementation Act for the RED II directive, and we need to work with them to have a EU-wide scheme. And in addition, we are also working internationally with our partners under the Mission Innovation or under the IPEG International Partnership for Hydrogen into the Economy, that we can expand this initiative globally to internationally at the worldwide level. Yes, Nigel, you mentioned already our first project. We started in 2015-16, and that was our first attempt to look at hydrogen territory, to look at how hydrogen can couple different sectors, how we can become more, or I would say even less dependent from other sources of energy if we have already local sources of energy. And indeed, we were proud about that, and we jumped even more and started to talk with the different regions and even look at the value chain and the supply chain. And that's, at that time when we started working on this, it was an idea in the joint undertaking. We didn't think that we will reach such a level of support or such a level of interest on hydrogen. First, on the first initiative at the level of regions, municipality, but on the right side, that we will discover and we will map and we will see such a strong supply chain and value chain in Europe of different actors. And that has, with this work, we have created different streams. One is the valley that also Nigel mentioned at the beginning, the hydrogen valley in the northern Netherlands. The other one is the initiative, the late initiative of the European Commission, more from the industrial side, the industrial strategy side, on the important project of common European interest. Yes, I would not insist more on the hydrogen valley in the northern Netherlands. I just wanted to show their plans. We just started this project. We signed the grant agreement, and we hope again to show the sectoral integration even on a larger scale. In this case, even looking at hydrogen storage underground. We'll get even into that. For less advanced regions, we are also working and offering development assistance, the project development assistance. We launch a call for expression of interest, and soon we will announce the winners. And we will get also towards more Central and Eastern Europe regions, which are now discovering hydrogen as a solution to decarbonize their areas. And as I mentioned already, internationally, we are also proud to mention that our idea of Hydrogen Valley has been picked up at clean energy ministerial level and at the mission innovation level. And we have recently launched our information sharing platform. And we hope also to be able to share and to exchange good practices, but also to identify the common barriers worldwide. And I hope that we can also work together to speed up introduction of these technologies and upscaling of these technologies worldwide. Now about the future. Yes, our life, in fact, and our budget finishes this year. Our last call just closed the end of April. We have received an overwhelming number of applications. We hope to sign also our last grant by the end of this year. And we have good perspective for the next 10 years. And this is what Hydrogen Europe has proposed. They have proposed very clear objectives for the new partnership with the European Commission. This is probably the name will be Clean Hydrogen Partnership. We are still working on that, as you can guess. And indeed, we will focus more on the strengths and on the learnings from the last 12 years. We will focus to keep our leadership mainly on the hydrogen production, especially on the electrolysis, the integration of renewables into the system, but also we will start more looking at how to move big quantities of hydrogen from A to B in Europe, but also worldwide. We will look at different types of transporting hydrogen from, so far, as you can guess, we look mainly on compressed for transport applications. Now we might have to look, but for sure we'll have to look at liquid, especially for heavy duty applications. We have to look at the technology. Is the technology ready for that? What we need to do to improve that technology, but also at different other carriers. We may have to look at liquid organic, ammonia, or other types of carriers. We will have to see where we are in these technologies. Are the technologies ready to move to the scale that both European Commission but also our industry is expecting? And what else is needed to be done immediately in research and innovation to have the technology ready for that? And when we talk about the applications, of course, we'll go beyond the applications that we have already in place right now. So not only transport, not only energy intensive industries, but we will also maybe start looking at the hydrogen turbines, for example, and we will expand as a cross-cutting matter on this hydrogen valleys concept, sectoral smart integration of the energy systems. We will have to cooperate more and more with other sectors. European Commission is pushing that we look for synergies. This is again a beauty of our technologies, hydrogen serving different sectors, and we will have to look more and more into cooperating. You may be aware we already started working with the other joint undertakings with the Shift to Rail, the one focused on trains, and we released last year a report where hydrogen could decarbonize the rail sector. We are doing the same, and we are about to release our common study, together with the Clean Sky joint undertaking with the role of hydrogen for aviation. And we will work together with these two joint undertakings, but we may have to also work with the Waterborne Partnership and with the 2.0 Partnership, which will address the maritime sector, but also the batteries and the trucks, for example, or for the truck sector. In addition, we will have to work probably with also Spire Partnership, for example, for energy intensive industries, etc. I'm not going to go through all of them, but this is the way, the landscape that the hydrogen or in which hydrogen partnership will have to work. And in terms of budget, at least our industry, Hydrogen Europe, has proposed to the European Commission that we need at least to double the budget that we currently have. And the budget that we currently have, I mentioned before, it was about $1 billion over the last 10, 11, 12 years. We will need to double that. And a main argument for doing that is that we move at large amounts of hydrogen, but also if we need to demonstrate the technology into the field, from the proof of concept, but even going to the technology validation, if we talk about trucks, planes, trains, or even ships, we will need a bigger budget to do that. There are other instruments also in the Commission, and I wanted to use the opportunity and that such a big presence to this webinar to share with you this. This is not what we do, but this is what the European Commission does, in addition to us, to the joint undertaking. There is also the Connecting Europe Facility program of the European Commission, and we have worked with our colleagues in this program on the infrastructure mainly. The Connecting Europe Facility program looks mainly into the energy or into the transport infrastructure, and so far we have worked with them to expand the hydrogen refueling stations network. There are several projects which are working and are complementing our projects, for example, for the buses in CEF. And we would like in the future to also work with them into the energy infrastructure, maybe hydrogen pipelines, or this type of activities. On the other hand, on the right side, there is also the Innovation Fund of the European Commission, DG Klima, which is planning to launch this year around summer, 1 to 2 billion. The amount is, the fixed amount is not yet known, but this is the range, 1 to 2 billion call for big demonstration project. This is again going beyond the joint undertaking efforts, which I'm representing, and it's going to very big projects of demonstrating again sectoral integration, and that should be also seen in the context of the other funding instruments of the European Commission and even financing instruments together with our European Investment Bank. And ultimately, I mentioned already briefly, but you may be also aware that our industry works with the European Commission under the industrial strategy umbrella. And this is where we talk about the important projects of common European interest, mainly with the member states also, but also with the DG competition in relation to the state aid rules. I know that in June, a Hydrogen Alliance will be launched related to this IPCEI initiative. And so far, we have already 11 projects, at least 11 clear projects, with for a 65 billion total investment, and a lot of member states, 22, involved and committed in these plans for hydrogen. With that, I just quickly go into also latest situation with COVID. We were all affected by that. Hydrogen Europe, again, our industry has taken a step and immediately done a survey between the members and to see how much these great plans that I presented before, all the achievements we've done, will be affected by this crisis. And it suggests that indeed the market, the hydrogen market, although in a good position, because you have seen probably the latest statement of Commissioner Kadri Simpson, who says that one of the three main streams that we are going to address this post-COVID recovery plan into the energy sector is also through innovative technologies, including clean hydrogen. And probably you've seen also the speech of President of the Commission yesterday in front of the Parliament when talking about the recovery, and again mentioned clean hydrogen as one of the solutions into the recovery. However, our industry wanted to take stock and to see where really we are in that and how much the industry is going to be affected. And it came to the conclusion that the revenues are set probably to decrease by 50%. Mostly the small and medium enterprises will be affected, and it's obvious why, with the decrease of 55% probably in their activities versus 42% for large companies. And this is again a survey done by Hydrogen Europe. Therefore, an additional need for the companies in the sector may be needed, and it's an estimation of about €500 million support for about 280 companies. And the message again somehow comes in line with what I just said before. The message from our industry is that we need to keep hydrogen into the European Green Deal. We need to keep to push on the Green Deal even post-COVID. And we need to continue to support research and innovation. And I sincerely hope we will get a higher budget in the next clean hydrogen. With that, I really thank you very much. I hope I didn't take too much of your time, and I'm looking forward for any questions. Thank you very much, Nigel, again for the kind invitation. My pleasure to be here today.
Mirela, thank you very much for that really informative presentation. And it raises clearly some of the massive opportunities that we have. So the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, and I think the focus on the production of hydrogen, the actual transportation of hydrogen from where you produce it to where you use it, is critical. And the other key part of this, I think, will be where does the demand for the hydrogen start to build up? So I'd like to use our second audience question poll to basically ask the question: are industry clusters in the UK and Europe an early market for the use of clean hydrogen? So, take a couple of moments just to consider that question and to put your vote onto the poll. But the whole direction of travel that I'm hearing, Mirela, from the European Commission is very positive in terms of the importance of hydrogen to Europe, in terms of the recovery, the economic stimulus post-COVID. So that set the scene very nicely for Europe. Now I want to cross the Atlantic, or the Pacific, depends which way we go, to the west coast of Canada, to Vancouver, where we're being joined by Nicolas Pocard, who is the Director of Marketing for Ballard Power Systems. So I think it's now about 6:30 in the morning for Nicolas, so thank you very much for getting up so early to join this session. Nicolas, you joined the fuel cell industry in 2004, a year before I first dipped my toe into the market there. And you've been with Ballard Power Systems since 2012. So you're looking after market strategy, marketing activities and government relations for Ballard. Would you like to take us through some of the trends that are happening with fuel cells for heavy duty motive applications, and maybe a few insights in terms of where you see things going forward? Nicolas, over to yourself.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, Nigel. I'm very happy to be to be part today of this series of webinar. And I'd like to share today some of our insight about where are we today for some of the applications which are highlighted earlier by Mirela, heavy-duty transportation, where fuel cell has a key role to play. So I'm going to give you a bit of an update of where we are and what does the industry needs to do in order to make sure that fuel cell is a part of the solution to decarbonization and meet and have a carbon neutral economy. So just very quickly, Ballard is a global company with a very strong presence in Europe, and the company is only doing fuel cells. So for the past almost 40 years, Ballard has been developing fuel cell technology. We are technology developer, manufacturer, with, as you can see, a very big focus on heavy-duty application. So today, we power a numbers of buses and trucks and trains and ships and forklifts. All those applications have something in common. They need to carry heavy load, and those vehicles have to be on the road a lot. So the demand in terms of duty cycles, the demand in terms of payload, and the demand in terms of routes and range is very important. And this is where fuel cell delivers the best value proposition. So this is where we focus on at Ballard. We manufacture products. We shipped last year roughly around 100 megawatt of fuel cell products to our customers. And but it was important over the years, we have gained a lot of experience, understanding better how fuel cell works, accumulated millions of hours of operating kilometers, as well as proven that fuel cell works. For example, fuel cell buses, which have been in operation in London for 10 years, have accumulated over 30,000 hours of operation without any degradation. We never change the stacks. So it shows that fuel cell works and fuel cell lasts. So what is next? So if you look a little bit at the heavy-duty vehicles, even though heavy-duty vehicles represent much less than the cars, they have a much higher impact on emission. Those vehicles pollute more, and they are on the road much more often. So we strongly believe that fuel cell technology is needed in order to achieve decarbonization of the transportation sector, especially heavy-duty transportation. Fuel cell deliver power, range, payload, so you don't have to compromise on the weight of the payload because you're carrying a very large battery, and having a very fast refueling enable commercial vehicle to operate more, to be more utilized, and that's very important for transit buses and for trucks. So when you look at this very important element of being able to have a long range, to carry a lot of passengers, a lot of goods, and to be able to operate a lot, fuel cell enable the electrification of the transportation sector by making electric vehicle better. And today, keep in mind that most of the fuel cell vehicles are hybrid battery fuel cell. So you get the best of both worlds. So, and if you look at where are the best application for fuel cell, and this graph came out of the Hydrogen Council report and the study which was done by McKinsey, and I will encourage you to download the report, which was published in January. And it really highlighted, on the top right of the slide, which application where hydrogen actually is more competitive compared to conventional option like diesel, and where hydrogen is more competitive to low carbon solution like batteries. And you can see that the one which are the most competitive, the most appealing, are really heavy duty trucks, medium duty trucks, forklifts, and buses and coaches. All those vehicles have in common the heavy use as well as the heavy loads they need to transport. So this is where fuel cell can deliver today the best value to customer using hydrogen as a fuel. And what has been interesting lately is we have noticed in the past 12 to 18 months an acceleration of investment and partnership being formed by the automotive sector into the fuel cell industry. You have seen all the major vehicle OEMs or tier one automotive suppliers investing in hydrogen and fuel cell technology. And this is there just a couple of names of companies which have decided to invest significant amount of resources and money into hydrogen and fuel cell. The latest one was the announcement earlier this month of Daimler and Volvo joining together in creating a joint venture to commercialize fuel cell trucks. So we really see, and all those companies have really highlighted that heavy-duty transportation is a big part of their focus. So we start to see now that the industry, that investment is flowing toward the development of fuel cell heavy-duty vehicles. So today, there's probably around 5,000 fuel cell buses and trucks in operation worldwide. There's a couple of pictures here. In Europe, here you can see those vehicles. Most of them actually were part of European funded projects. And you have today fuel cell buses that come on all sizes, all flavor, from 12-meter bus to double-decker or articulated buses. You have also probably around 2,000 of those fuel cell electric buses in operation worldwide, and around 3,000 fuel cell trucks. A lot of them are those, the one you see here, those 7 to 9 ton delivery trucks operating in streets of cities like Shanghai or Shenzhen. But we start to see in Europe here or in North America, larger truck being developed, heavy-duty trucks for transportation of goods, or even very large trucks like this mining truck project that we are doing with Anglo American in South Africa. So really we can see here the breadth of application, but they have all have something in common. It's all about providing enough power for heavy-duty vehicle for them to perform in their required duty cycles, route, and power requirement. So today, as I say, we have around 5,000 commercial vehicles on the road, buses and trucks. If you add around 15,000 light-duty cars on the road worldwide, so it's probably around 20 plus thousand fuel cell vehicles. Now, a lot of government have, in the past couple of years, including Europe, have published roadmaps where hydrogen is a part of the decarbonization path. So we have seen in the EU, in China, in Japan, in Korea, Australia, and US and Canada have all included hydrogen as a path of decarbonization of the economy. And the goal is to get probably around 10 million fuel cell vehicles by the year 2030 and 2040. So how do we get there? And a number of projects have been announced. At the moment, 350 fuel cell buses are being deployed through the JIVE project, which is funded by the FCH-JU. Some projects like the H2Bus Europe bus program, supported by the CEF funding that Mirela mentioned earlier, is being rolled out now. And you see in different parts of the world, large numbers of buses and trucks are being deployed. So how do we get to 20 million vehicles? I think there are two main things that the industry needs to work. We need to continue to improve and invest in the technology so fuel cell vehicle gets better, and we need to reduce the total cost of ownership. At the end of the day, you can have the best technology, but if it's not affordable for the fleet operators, it's never going to go through. So those two key elements are very important. On the technology side, at Ballard, we keep investing in the technology to make the products better, to make the products more durable, and the products smaller, higher power density, so they can fit easier in the vehicle. They can be lighter, very important for trucks, as they can provide more power, especially as we are moving up with larger vehicles going to trains and ships. You need more power efficient vehicle. And so a lot of investment being done in technology in order to make fuel cell better. But the big challenge is really on the cost reduction. And I referred earlier to the report which was published by the Hydrogen Council. Ballard also published a report with Deloitte at the beginning of the year. So those two reports really look at the cost reduction and scaling up. And what does it take in order for hydrogen and fuel cell technology to be affordable? And those both reports really highlight that within the next 10 years, actually less than 10 years, for commercial vehicle application like heavy-duty vehicles, a fuel cell vehicle will be cheaper to operate and to run than a battery electric vehicle or diesel vehicle. And that's very important. There's really a path today to really do a cost reduction and to make sure, and at the end, having fuel cell vehicle being more cost effective than even diesel vehicle. Now, it's an example here of the trucks. So today, yes, the fuel cell trucks or even the battery trucks are more expensive than a diesel truck. But we believe that there's a path to reduce by 70% the cost of the fuel cell. And just something very important to consider, a fuel cell is an engine. A fuel cell is an industrial part, is made of steel, carbon, aluminum, and is manufactured part, very much like an engine. Today, fuel cell systems are only made by a couple of thousand at a time. But you can imagine if you scale that to 10,000 or hundreds of thousands, not to even say million, the cost reduction potential is tremendous. It's just like an engine. When you look at the complexity today of a Euro 6 diesel engine, it's extremely complex with moving parts, very high temperature, and that engine costs roughly 20,000 euros. So you can imagine taking a much simpler engine, a fuel cell is much simpler, much less moving part, operating at low temperature, using less complex systems, and to be able to drive the cost down of that lower than a diesel engine. Nobody is doing that. So to be able to do that 70% cost reduction, where hydrogen can be at parity as a solution with battery electric and then diesel, which is more important, is feasible. So we need to work on the fuel cell side, but also we need to work on a hydrogen cost. You know, if you look at a TCO vehicle, fuel cost represents 30 to 40%, depending on the application. So to be able to have affordable, low carbon hydrogen is very important, and reduce the price of the fuel cell system. So we believe at Ballard that it's possible. We have a plan in place. We believe that we can reduce the cost of a fuel cell system by 70%. And we are doing that now. We have started that journey. We are not going to do it alone. We are working with industry partners in order to scale up, industrialize fuel cell system and fuel cell vehicle production. We have a number of European customers and European partners helping us to drive down the cost of fuel cell solution. We need to leverage a supply chain, but more important, I think what for me I have seen the most encouraging news is we start to see the automotive supply chain companies like Bosch, Mahle, and very much in Europe or Michelin developing component of the balance of plant of a fuel cell system. So today, as a technology company, we do have access to lower cost, better, more robust components for fuel cell systems, which are being developed by the European supply chain. So that's very important. So to reduce the cost. Now, on the fuel cell side, at Ballard, we have a project which enable us to reduce by 80% the cost of the fuel cell stack by increasing production capacity, by looking at a technology innovation, continue to reduce platinum loading, improving power density, working on new materials for using low-cost carbon plates in order to make the products more affordable, looking at improving production yields. So that program is in place, and we believe that in the next 5 to 6 years, we'll reduce the price of a fuel cell stack by 80%. And more important, we're also looking at recycling and refurbishing a fuel cell. That's a very important element. And fuel cell can be done. Today at Ballard, we are recycling every year several thousand stacks. Customers send us back the stack. We disassemble the stack. We reuse the plate using carbon plates. We can reuse them, we wash them, reuse them, recondition them. The core of the cell, fuel cell, we recycle around 95% of the platinum, which is reused, and then we recondition the stack and send it back to customer. So that's very important in order to reduce the life cycle cost of the product, but also enable the owner to have a residual value on a vehicle. But we are not going to win that battle if we don't get hydrogen also at a lower cost. And this is where, you know, in some part of Europe, in Scotland and others, you can have access to low cost, low carbon hydrogen. It can come from renewable energy, like you have in Scotland with the wind, but some other parts of Europe, including Scotland also, you can use natural gas with carbon sequestration to generate low carbon hydrogen and low cost. At the end of the day, different studies, either done by McKinsey or done by Bloomberg, have shown that it's possible to reach hydrogen cost at $1 per kilogram. So we have a path not only to reduce the cost of hydrogen, but also we have a path to reduce the cost of fuel cell to make fuel cell vehicle affordable. But at the end of the day, I just want to leave you with one thought. It's very important to have zero emission vehicle, but we need to make sure that the choice of technology we are using is also sustainable, that we don't create any side effect, that we don't have create a lot of waste. And we believe that fuel cell, with being part of the circular economy, will provide not only a zero emission solution, but a sustainable solution. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for your time today, and I hope that I will be able to share some important information with you. And thank you very much for your attention.
Nicolas, thank you very much indeed. So, you know, some key messages there around the cost reduction for the fuel cells, the operation, the maintenance, but also the focus coming in on the importance of making sure that the cost of the hydrogen comes down. And this very much, reflects on one of the points that Mirela made earlier, which was the Clean Hydrogen Partnership, looking at the importance of using hydrogen or renewables integration. So if we can access large-scale, low-cost renewables to make the hydrogen, we can help the hydrogen cost to come down. So that's very much the topic of our third audience question, which is get your buttons ready. Can electrolyzers and hydrogen infrastructure enable the greater use of offshore wind? So this is essentially, can we enable the potential of offshore wind to produce large amounts of renewable energy, make it into hydrogen, and bring it to the markets? And obviously, Nicolas, you'll be waiting there for the cheap hydrogen to actually power your trucks and your buses and your trains to make it all happen. Absolutely. If we can now go on to our third speaker, again a veteran of the hydrogen and fuel cell sector, Dr. Kerrian Adamson is working for Advisian, who are part of the Whirly group, and she's spearheading the development of a new product offering. So this is going to be the last public presentation that Kerry-Ann gives before Project X launches in the summer of 2020. So pay close attention. Kerry-Ann, it's all over to you.
Thank you. First of all, remembering how to unmute myself, so I do apologise. It's not a great start. So thank you very much, Nigel, and I'm sure everybody will notice a slight change from the title in the programme. Personally, I think words count and sayings matter. And I think the term post-COVID is a lovely marketing phrase that actually bears little reality to the world we're living in now. There is no post-COVID. COVID is with us, whether economies rebounce, whether jobs are regained. That still means 300,000 people are without loved ones. And I think using the term post-COVID is a misnomer. So I talk about the new normal. And I do apologise for getting slightly emotional. That was not expected and not very professional. So this is the year of three normals. And what has been shown in this year is how quickly our world can change, how quickly we can pivot. Now, any government around the world tends to think that societies cannot change quickly, tends to think that we as consumers will not change our behaviours quickly. We tend to talk about policies of about 2035, 2040, then we'll stop selling diesel cars, then we'll stop selling petrol cars. And that gives everybody a run in to get used to the idea. But the reality is that this year has proven that worlds do pivot really quickly. Now, I'm using IEA numbers here, not because we've agreed that they are the single source of truth, but because they are public and they are well thought of. So the IEA World Energy Outlook, which is a report we all reference and I'm sure we all use in our professional lives, in last November, so only a handful of months ago, in their current policy scenario, which is very much a business as usual scenario, was forecasting that energy demand would rise 1.3% every single year to 2040. Now that was less than 6 months ago that forecast came out. And then, you know, all power to them, April of this year, they came out with the Global Energy Review. And they've said already in this year, we have seen energy demand in Europe go down by 10 to 12%, the US 8 to 10%, decrease, Japan 7 to 8%, South Korea 7%, China astronomically, its energy demand has dropped by between 2 and 6%, depending on which numbers you look at, and India is down 3 to 5%. What this actually means is, depending on what shape of a global economic recovery you choose to use, whether it's a curve or whether it's a sharp straight line straight back up, 2020 could see a global energy demand drop of 6% globally. That is the, if you look at some numbers, that's the largest drop since pre-World War II. Now that just shows how much 3 months changes the world. And what's really interesting is it's highlighted a number of really core trends that we're seeing in the marketplace. We're seeing coal. The coal is being increasingly pushed out of the marketplace. This morning we saw one of the major Norwegian investment banks remove all its funding, all its shareholdings in any company that had over 30% of its revenue coming from coal, just overnight. We've seen ExxonMobil 2 days ago have its three major investors say, you're not moving quickly enough in the energy transition with oil. So we're not, you know, we're going to put a vote of no confidence in their CEO and have them replaced. This is the new normal. What we are living in now is the new normal. Decarbonisation, energy transition, whichever phrase you choose to use to describe what we are living through now, is becoming the new normal. And how much we tie this to rebuilding economies or rebuilding people's lives or rebuilding trust in our politicians, and faith in ourselves to be able to cope with situations like this, is what the discussion's about. Now, what we see in this chart, again, it's from the IEA Global Energy Review. This is a free report. This is why I've taken it from it, is that what we've seen is the growth in renewables. Renewables have proven themselves over the last 3 months to be able to provide power that is economically viable. So that the economic case for oil and the economic case for renewables is now within striking distance of each other. Renewables have provided baseload in some cases, have provided in some cases, in some days, in some countries, the entire power for that country. Now that is a first ever since records began, which is a much overused term. And that is a trend we're going to keep seeing. Even throughout this energy transition, or throughout this last 3 month period, investment in the energy transition has not dipped. Investment in renewables has not gone away, and that is something to remember. So what is our new normal? What are we living in now? What are the trends that we're going to see grow or exacerbated in the next few months? Increased working from home. This is a no-brainer. Companies like my own have proven that we can work from home. Now, we're not talking about mental health, we're not talking about productivity levels, we're not talking about any of those, but physically, people can work from home. That is going to impact the housing market. How many people actually have a spare room where people can work from? I'm sitting in the corner of the living room. I'm sitting in Scotland. I apologise, the curtains are shut because it is actually sunny today. I know people don't believe that. But not everybody has a large enough house to have a room sectioned off to work in. So we're going to see changes in the housing market. Well, what about the structure of the office market? if people are working from home, are we going to see offices have to have a clearer USP for companies to actually take leases on? Is that USP going to be they're carbon neutral? Never mind, we're going to have to assume they're safe for people to work in. But what about carbon neutral? What about presenting themselves as energy resilient? So we're going to see changes in the structure of the office market. We are going to see in the short to medium term. Now, when I say short to medium term, I really mean 1 to 6 months, 1 month to a year, not 1 to 5 months. A return of private car use to the office. People who can will increasingly look to using their own private cars rather than public transport. There's going to be a fear of the use of public transport instilled, and has been instilled in a number of people in a number of countries. That will have an impact, and could be a fundamental shift in energy demand. That 1.6% annual growth, that was based on the old models. All old models, all old forecasts have now been thrown out. We are now rewriting what the future looks like, what the forecasts in energy demand look like, what the forecasts in hydrogen uptake look like, what the forecasts in car sales, everything is now being rewritten. What about supply chain resilience? Now, before all this kicked off, there was a micro trend. So whether it was a full-blown trend or whether it was just a small thing, we're not sure. But we started to see some countries start to move supply chains out of China and into India. Now, whether that's going to be exacerbated by what's happening, by this new normal, will we see supply chains pull out of China but move to India and Africa? Now, don't forget the rise of Africa. Now, this is very rarely talked about outside of specific topics, but what we are seeing in Africa is huge economic growth and huge increase in innovation and potential for a boom in the African economy. Or are we going to see onshoring? Now, we know in countries like Japan, they have released funds for companies to pull out of China and onshore their supply chains back in the home country. In Japan, we know there's talk, it's just talk at the minute in the US of a similar type of fund. What that could be is a huge win for hydrogen and a huge win for a lot of different technologies if onshoring is linked to best environmental practice and therefore linked to things like the European Green Deal. If we see aluminium, which as Nicolas has said, aluminium is used in fuel cell manufacture. Aluminium emissions in China are quite astronomically bad due to the predominant use of coal in China. So if we see re-onshoring of aluminium plants out of China back to the home countries, that could be a significant opportunity for hydrogen, for renewable energy, and for best environmental practice. It probably will happen in some countries. Not all countries will see onshoring. It would be it's an interesting trend to watch. Transport. As we said already, is going to be an increase in private car use in the short to medium term. Longer term, there will be, it is likely we'll see an increase in or transition back to using public transport as a society, we get used to this new normal. For airline travel, there's going to be a really interesting debate as to whether we actually see a long-term decrease in business travel. The fact that we, as a group of people from around the world, are speaking to nearly 900 people by video camera, and it being so far technically successful, the question has to be raised, is there going to be a need in the future to fly around the world to meet clients, do as many conferences, speak to people, or are we going to see a long-term decrease in that business travel, whether it's for conferences, whether it's for client meetings, and the impact that that will have on airlines? Public transport in the short to medium term is likely to be hit badly by passenger numbers. They will still keep running, but will that increase, therefore have to increase fares to allow these companies to keep operating, and will that be an unvirtuous circle almost? So in energy, we certainly see renewables continuing to thrive, and daily now we're seeing press releases come out of a huge increase in multi-megawatt, tens of megawatt renewable projects. EPC contracts come through, engineering, procurement, and construction contracts for renewable energies are now almost becoming the norm in companies like my own. Oil demand we've seen just go off a cliff recently, but in the short to medium term, we think that oil demand will increase again, but the demand will be losses. Demand for losses will actually be offset by an increase in car use. That's something that will balance out. And like I said already, there's a confluence of factors which are continuing to remove coal from the equation. But how does all this translate to hydrogen? Okay, so there's not all positive, it's not all negative. So the first one is that if we do have onshoring, we could see significant demand increase for decarbonised hydrogen from the build of new process industry locations, and also from retrofit. That is a medium-term to long-term impact. That's not going to happen overnight. That's certainly not going to be something we're going to see sudden demands of 20, 40 megawatt hydrogen electrolyzers tomorrow, but that's certainly something we could see in the medium term going forward. But the rate of innovation and technical breakthroughs has not changed in the last few months. So we haven't seen a fundamental change in the cost of fuel cells and hydrogen. Nicolas pointed out that's a long-term trend, not a short-term trend. So we can't assume that tomorrow we're going to get this $1 a kilogram green hydrogen. Again, this is a path of innovation we need to stick to get those costs out. Again, though, on the positive, as a company, we are seeing turnkey projects on the horizon that will attract a lot of intention. Profit margins, investment, commercial projects that will unlock. One commercial project unlocks another commercial project, unlocks a wave of commercial projects. So alongside the great work that's been done in the FCH-JU, we are seeing a lot more commercially focused interest in hydrogen, decarbonised hydrogen. Now, as a family, the thing is that on this call, we are pretty much 900 people in a very large family. But if you stick your tiny toe outside of the family, the debate still rages on as to the value add of hydrogen. You just have to spend 5 minutes on LinkedIn to see people having deep, in-depth debates on efficiency and value add and why use hydrogen, why don't we just use electricity. That has not gone away, and that continues. And whilst it's very easy for us as a family, as an industry, to go, okay, that's just happening still, the reality is that we need to continue to work with the people who the old enemies, as we say up here, are the old enemy, and we need to continue to be that bridge for discussion and debate and partnership and linking together and working together, and we can't let that drop. And finally, what's interesting is the global stakeholders that traditionally have not necessarily been pro or anti-hydrogen, but have been very much the oil and gas sector. They are doubling down on the energy transition. BP and Shell have come out with their net zero targets. We know that Exxon are facing an investor revolt based on their lack of net zero targets. So these groupings are doubling down. In fact, there was a news release, I wish I'd copied it, this morning from BP on one of their hydrogen projects. Now, these are people who we want to work with, we want to build partnerships with, and we want to be able to have in the fold and being part of the transition. Now, we all know on this call, we are not a silver bullet, right? Nobody on this call has said we are the only answer. Nobody would say that. This is not a silver bullet. Hydrogen works best when it's in partnership with renewables and batteries and flywheels and all the other options. And by bringing a global stakeholder grouping together, then that is where we really leverage the opportunities that the hydrogen industry faces. So, but there's a key question in all of this is if there's an increase in interest in decarbonised hydrogen from the new normal, or whilst we now exist in the new normal as a sector, are we actually ready to meet the challenges? Are we ready to step up and supply the demand that we could potentially see? Do we have the skills at hand to be able to staff and increase our staffing levels Do we have the safety levels? Do we have the levels of information on safety that we need to do mass rollout? Now, there's a really interesting point by Mirela that made, I appreciate it was a Hydrogen Europe slide, not an FCH-JU slide, on how much finance is going to be needed to keep staff in the industry. I would suggest that longer term, we're also facing a real skills gap, a real skills challenge. And not only do we need to be looking at how to keep staff now, but also how we put in a pipeline of skills so that as companies expand, companies like mine, companies like all the other companies in this area expand, that they have a pool of talent that they can pull from. Now, that is going to be a mixture of retraining, that is going to be a mixture of upskilling, and that is going to be a mixture of, and taking people from university and skilling. Now, how we do this as an industry is we can do it as an individual company, but we have far more clouds if we sit down together and do it as an industry. Investment, right? Our industry is still small. It is still tiny. It is decarbonized hydrogen and fuel cells. We are still small. We are still fundamentally niche. We need to grow as companies. We need to have more suppliers. We need to have customer choice. Now, this is all going to take investment in companies, investment in projects, and commercial rollout. Now, I have to say one of the biggest bright points I've had in the past 3 months was a number of conversations with the investor community who are actively putting funds together to invest in companies and invest in projects which have a direct link to hydrogen. So there is that. Now we have to be able to leverage that, and we have to be able to actively engage with this community again. So I would say active engagement, it will be one of the key trends that we need to be able to do to leverage this new normal. The oil and the energy transition, right? This is the new normal. When people say, how do I come and work in the energy transition? Well, you already are. If you're working today, you are working in the energy transition, because this is the world that we are living in. Hydrogen as an industry is moving from small niche markets to becoming part of a large normalized landscape. That is a long-term play. That is, as Nicolas said, this is 10 years of hard graft ahead of us, and this is 10 years of it becoming a normal part of the energy equation in transport, in heavy duty, in industry, and it's very much an industry that I'm now focused. So what about our supply chain? If we are going to have increase in industry of hydrogen, do we have resilient supply chains to supply that? Still think there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the supply chains going into the tier 1 and the OEM manufacturers. And speaking of manufacturing, we need to be able to increase sustainably manufacturing of both fuel cells and electrolyzers to meet market demand in a way that doesn't put pressure on all points of the supply chain, and in a way that doesn't overpromise and underdeliver. So we are living in a new normal, but a lot of the new normal looks like the old normal in a lot of ways as well. But as a sector, we are faced with opportunity, we are faced with an increase in interest. But I think the key thing is we now have to work, it more than ever, is work together as a sector, but also work together with the renewable energy industry, with the battery industry, and with the old enemies, with the oil and gas industry itself. And finally, one punt from me personally is that already on this call, we use competing terms or different terms to mean the same thing. We have spoken about low carbon hydrogen, clean hydrogen, decarbonized hydrogen, green hydrogen, blue hydrogen. Now, we have to sort this out, because my colleagues in the US talk about clean hydrogen, and we talk about decarbonized hydrogen in Europe or green hydrogen. We need to almost settle on a term so we have a global understanding of what we're talking about, so the customer is not buying something and getting something different. And that's not going to be a huge, well, that's a marketing thing. We can do this. We can change this. So I've spoken a bit about the new normal and where my company fits in it. So I work for a company called Advisian, which is part of a global company called Worley. Advisian is very much the front end, the consulting part of Worley, and Worley is the design and build. So Worley does EPC, it does feed, pre-feed. So all those deep tech, Worley builds things, they're world class at building things, and we do the front end work. Now in Advision we have seven different work streams, and hydrogen is covered in all of them. In fact, the only thing that's not in the minute is sulfur and process technologies. Give us another 6 months, we'll work out hydrogen projects in there as well. From offshore pipelines taking hydrogen through to development of artificial islands that to produce hydrogen, to investor due diligence, to marketing plans, to developing potential certification plans. So we do everything like this as Advision, and then when it comes to the build, we hand off to our colleague in Worley. So we're in a unique space that as a company we can take it from blank piece of paper to ribbon cutting, and we are increasingly doing that for the asset life cycle of hydrogen projects. Now, as Nigel said, and as anybody who knows me, this slide genuinely terrifies me, because this is the first time I've been allowed to talk, or I have spoken in public about what I've been working on and what I'm continuing to work on for the next few months. So as a company, we have a group called Advision Market Services, and it has got a world-class reputation for benchmarking and analysis in energy refining and petrochemicals industries. So if you happen to work in petcokes, which is a particular type of thing that goes into a refinery, you will know of Advision Market Services. But what we are doing is that my company gave my colleagues and myself funding to basically develop and deliver the first Advision Market Services decarbonisation product. This will be launched in the not too distant future, and what we are doing is building ground up technical based information that will allow the industry, heavy industry, to have a decreased time to business critical insights from everything that's going on in the energy transition. Obviously hydrogen plays a key role in this and will have a huge plank in this. This is a service that will be web-based. I'm not giving in the game away to say we'll be using Tableau to create a really rich web-based dashboard for clients to interact with. There will be a free part of this as well, and it will allow heavy industry to understand the impact to their business operations. I am really excited about this. I wish I could tell you everything. I really can't, but we will be starting to do webinars not too distant future about how this will roll out and what we'll be covering in depth. But this is my first teaser slide, and I really wanted a friendly audience, which I know you all are, to be able to talk for the first time about this, and I'm sure you can hear my nerves. So this is coming out soon. We will be talking a lot more about this soon, and I hope, and I just know that a lot of people will be very interested in it when it comes out. So thank you for bearing with me for that last slide. It's much appreciated. And I will hand you back over to Nigel. Thank you.
Kerry-Ann, thank you very much. So a very, very comprehensive run through of some of the sort of changes that are happening. But also, so some consistent messages about the importance for the hydrogen sector to work with other groups. And that brings us on to our final audience question. Should investment in hydrogen be a priority for post-COVID regeneration? So think that one over. Post your thoughts on the electronic poll board. And I'm now going to introduce our final speaker, Mark Crowther. So we are actually running slightly behind time, but I've had a little sort of message that we can stretch from the hard 3:30 cutoff to slightly later. But Mark, if you can canter through your slides, that would be great. Mark's technical director with Kiwa UK, over 35 years experience in the energy sector. But throughout this, he's taken a particular interest in hydrogen, and during the 2011, 2012. Played one of the early, important roles in starting to promote hydrogen as a green energy vector. So essentially how hydrogen can actually help the whole energy system to decarbonise. Mark, I know your thoughts have moved on and evolved considerably since then. And I'd like to just hand over to you and give you the opportunity to give us an update in terms of, where you see what you've got to so far. And maybe some of your insights about how the early market for hydrogen in the UK will develop. You know, will this be industry that drives this, or will it be a big plan for decarbonising heat on a national scale? Over to you, Mark.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Crowther, Technical Director of Kiwa Gastech here in the UK. This is going to be a rather sort of GB UK focused talk, I'm afraid, probably because I hadn't appreciated just how large numbers of international people would be joining us. So if we go straight into the first one here, our shares, yep. So we go straight into the first thing here, which I think is therefore going to be here. Yep, that's there. It's all right, hopefully. Yes, is that okay? Yes. So this is me. So we then go on to repurposing the gas grid, which I will then share like that. Where I'm coming from is that, which may be different to many of the audience, is the idea of repurposing the existing low pressure gas network, which covers about 85% of UK properties, which is mostly the yellow polyethylene pipes that you see if you dig up the road. Many people think, and including many of the UK GDNOs, that's gas distribution companies, that such pipes are eminently suitable to be repurposed to hydrogen, keeping the same pressure tiers, because it is possible, despite the lower calorific value of hydrogen, because of its Wobbe index, it's possible to supply the still number of kilowatts to the individual property that requires it. How have we got to there? Well, in 2014-15, we had a project correctly in Scotland where we leaked quantities of hydrogen and natural gas into a remote Scottish farmhouse. That then led in 2015 to a study for Northern Gas Networks called FCH-JU, which if you do a Google search on, you'll find lots of references to, and I think is still one of the sort of best expositions of how you could roll out full hydrogen to a city as large as Leeds. Kiwa Gastech was the main contractor on that, and we're quite proud of it. Went on to a study for KPMG on hydrogen and the advantages of it. And more recently, we're working on the Hy4Heat project, which is a government project, where you'll also see there are a range of UK companies from Baxi to Worcester Bosch to Glendimplex, who are now all actually producing or about to produce and have got on their websites gas fires, gas boilers, gas cookers, and that sort of thing. We've also been doing a lot of work with the company which owns all the yellow pipes in Scotland, called SGN. A lot of underpinning safety work there, looking at the effects of what the difference you'd have to do to manage a leak off a network with natural gas as working with hydrogen. And there's another parallel project called H21, which is looking at the leaks from damaging networks. So, I mean, where we are in the UK is almost poised to actually demonstrate a village to convert either a few or all of the village from hydrogen from natural gas to hydrogen. One of the disadvantages of hydrogen, of course, is traditionally everyone has to do it. If you come up to any town and the mayor says, we want to go to hydrogen, you can't have individual houses, some staying on hydrogen, some staying on natural gas, because either you repurpose the gas pipes or you don't. Now, as a first of a kind, that's probably not such a good idea. So what we're proposing here is a bit of a research idea that we really think we should get on with, and hence my title for today, which is Learning by Doing. So we have the technology in terms of the hydrogen can be made, it can be stored, you can use existing yellow pipes for it, and as you've heard earlier, people like Bosch and Baxi are producing hydrogen boilers. So why do we want to start doing things? Well, we need to give investors confidence. We need to pick up on Kerry-Ann's point. We need to develop the gas engineering skill base. We need to strengthen the appliance supply chain in appliances, pipes and fittings. We need to involve the whole of the gas retail sector, and we need to test consumer appetite. So Now, as a result of COVID-19, plants and other component manufacturers, they want a runway to successful projects. I mean, a lot of these projects are now kick-started, but we really need to go out there and do a demo somewhere, because I think once we have the archetypal hydrogen town, which can then be hung off it for hydrogen for industry, for hydrogen for vehicles, via a cleanup package and that sort of thing, low-cost bulk hydrogen suddenly gives options almost beyond their dreams. So what would the perfect project have? It would have green hydrogen, and I hope there's not too much debate of what I mean. Green hydrogen has a very, very low carbon footprint, probably from wind or solar, from a direct wire wind turbine, but with full grid backup in case the wind doesn't blow. You want householder options so they can choose between natural gas and hydrogen, which is a bit of a special thing I'm coming on to later. It can demonstrate all aspects of the hydrogen supply chain. It needs to be big enough. There's no point in just converting one house, if you see one, or two houses. You want to be converting 300 houses, up to 1,000 houses. You want the support of the local mayor. You want it to be rolled out to a larger scale if and when successful, including the real possibility of local geological storage. And you want it fits with the country's larger scale ambitions, which I think Scotland have, Edinburgh have. So to continue with this, a modest and appropriate budget, ideally competitive with electric heat pumps. Ready to proceed to provide a market for hydrogen of our plants is late 2021. So we're talking about really, really quickly now. A straightforward safety case, provides stakeholder confidence, and ideally the developer should have a proven record in successfully and safely delivering flammable gases across the whole country. I mean, that's why the great advantage of getting it led by somebody like SGN, who currently deliver all the gas to all the 5 million houses or something like that. There may be less than that, Nigel. Maybe you can correct me later, in Scotland. And ideally, it might even be commissioned before COP26. And where might this, so I've given you a specification. It's a little bit of a cheat, obviously, but where might such a location be found? And that will be on the Firth of Forth, which Nigel, if he looks out of his window, can probably see and wave at. And that's it there. There is there, for those people who are not familiar with it, it's an old mining town fallen on hard times on the north side of the Firth of Forth, which happens, as these places do, to have a 7 megawatt offshore wind turbine. It's not very offshore, but it's claimed to be offshore. And the plan is then to put an electrolyser on the foreshore there, and then run a new parallel polyethylene pipe to past 1,000 houses. And then people will have the option of connecting or not to that pipe, and then putting in their hydrogen combi boiler, putting in their hydrogen gas fire, putting in their hydrogen hob, and generally using hydrogen, and maybe even hydrogen fuel cells, because that clearly does give you lots of quite exciting potential. But don't let's go there this afternoon. So this, all right, is so we have green hydrogen here from a gas turbine, from a wind turbine on the seafront. We have a couple of electrolysers, or maybe more. We have some hydrogen stored in tanks using conventional, I don't know how much, I think it is quite internationally. We call them bullets in the UK. They're just large steel tanks operating about 30 bar. And then an ordinary low pressure 65 millibar polyethylene transmission system around the town in front of 1,000 houses with maybe 300 to 500 just domestic connections. This will be a FOA, a first in the world. It has all those advantages I talked about earlier. So what can be learnt? We can have close connection between the wind turbine and electrolyser. Has been done before, but it's still quite difficult. We can learn how to operate the electrolyser on a variable load, because one of the problems of supplying the gas industry is that the loads all over the place. Management storage, operation of pressure reduction station odorization. You've got to actually operate this gas network. Conversion of consumers, especially inconvenience and general hassle. People don't like having their house knocked about, the paintwork kicked and that sort of thing. So we want to go into there. The psychology of conversion to hydrogen, extended operation of hydrogen appliances, proof of emergency procedures, and very interestingly, perspective of householders on the pros and cons of a hydrogen rollout. And then interesting from commercial and manufacturing sites and the views of local authority, and many more technical, regulatory and psychological spaces. So lessons to be learned. But to learn all this project, or the project has to undergo final design, build and commission and operate. And if we don't get on with it now, we're going to lose another heating season, which is 3% of the time to 2050. So the UK should undertake the doing of such projects now. Bit quick, Nigel, bit rushed, but there was a lot of pressure on me. Over to you, I think, for some questions and answers.
Mark, thank you very much. That's brought us right back onto time as the hour hand cuts through the bottom of the clock. So the minute hand cuts through the bottom of the clock, indeed. So I think we've got time for a few questions, and they are coming in thick and fast. So anybody who wants to hang on, I think we've got another 10 minutes or so on questions. And I'm not going to be able to take them all, but let's just start off. There's actually one question that I'll just throw open to anybody. Is are there projects looking at linking hydrogen to green ammonia? So yeah, Mark, do you think there's anything relevant here in terms of using ammonia as a way of converting hydrogen and making it transportable? And after Mark's comments, maybe Kerry-Ann, if you'd just like to say something about this as a way of moving around energy.
I think these hydrogen projects are complicated enough to get off the ground anyway. Or whilst all the individual technologies are known, actually getting the general public on board, getting politicians on board is very complicated. So I tend to say, let's do the simple stuff first. So, a wind turbine you can go and buy. You can go and buy an electrolyzer. There's lots of stuff that you can just so. But to date, the world has not particularly rolled out in terms of a domestic or commercial setting the use of hydrogen outside industry. So my general belief is, if people believe that hydrogen has real potential outside industry, then let's do simple things first, rather than trying to investigate other routes, which may have their time in the future, but which must be a complication relative to the image I just showed you before of a wind turbine, an electrolyzer, and a couple of miles of plastic pipe.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Kerry-Ann, any thoughts about? So this links into the whole idea of starting to move hydrogen, from where you make it to where you use it. How do you see this playing out in terms of pipelines, ammonia, liquid organic hydrogen carriers? Any thoughts on that one?
Nigel, can I suggest that I know Nicholas really is under time pressure, so if we focus on any questions for Nicholas first, and then we can come back to this if we have time, because I'm not under the time pressure that I know Nicholas is. Sorry. Okay,
no problem. Nicholas,
thank you, Kerry.
What I hear for you, which is very much around, if Ballard are starting to work in other areas around the world, are there any issues you can foresee around protecting your patents when you're actually working in different countries?
Well, IP protection is always a concern for every technology company, and I think we work with partners. Whenever we choose partners, we try to do a due diligence to make sure partner respect IP. And so far, even in China, I should say, we have not had any issue. We are carefully choosing partners, and we don't see a problem there, and we have not seen a problem. It's just a matter of choosing the right partners. And if you want to do cooperation, you might have to share IPs, and we do that with some of the European partners, and where we share IPs, we develop joint IP. It's all about, we need to move towards industry, and that's some of the path that we're doing.
Okay, excellent. And another question again for you, Nicholas. It's linked to the cost of hydrogen. So often the cost of moving the hydrogen to the refueler location can be more than the cost of producing the hydrogen. Do Ballard have any thoughts on how you might develop small scale hydrogen production units next to your refueling stations? Is that something that Ballard get involved in, or do you make a distinction between you make the motive power unit and somebody else deals with the refueling?
Well, we're not involved directly in the refueling. However, is very key. So we work with the ecosystem partners to make sure that our customers get affordable fuel. The question is a really good one. There's a balance between the production at scale, and the larger the production is, the cheaper you can get hydrogen, and then the transport. So you need to reach the right balance. On-site production has advantage. You don't have any transportation cost. However, you might not get access to the right cost of energy. And as you know, the cost of energy is a really big part, pretty 70% of the cost of hydrogen at the end of the day. So in some cases, it might make more sense to have a centralized, larger scale hydrogen production, but keep it local. So you don't have to transport hydrogen for hundreds of thousands of kilometers. But if you do hydrogen production within a radius of 100 or 200 kilometers, then the cost of transportation are still reasonable, and it's just getting the right balance. Now, if you have a site where you need a lot of hydrogen, then local production makes a lot of sense on site. But sometimes you might want to go through a regional, large-scale production at a location where you have access to the best energy price, or maybe sometimes off the grid, like behind the meter, so you can use directly renewable energy from the producer and produce your hydrogen there and then transport hydrogen. I think it's just to try to get the right balance of scale and transportation distance.
Hello, sorry, can I just interrupt a moment? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
You like that?
I agreed with you, everything. I agree with you entirely, except at the very end. Pipelines are so much cheaper to transport energy than electricity. I mean, that's this great factor of sort of 10 and upwards.
I think there's a good topic to come back to here, Mark. So pipelines, I think, is a whole webinar in itself. And it's actually linked into the next question. So I'll leave this one open for all of you, to come in. Yes. So cost of production of hydrogen from electrolysis will always be linked to the cost of the electricity. So as we start to see different regions developing low-cost renewables, will we also see the emergence of hydrogen superpowers, who can actually essentially start to dominate the market in producing and distributing hydrogen? Who wants to take that one to start off with?
Nigel, that's a very passive question. That implies we're going to allow this to happen. And the question is, like, if we're going to go towards a decarbonised hydrogen marketplace, and I think it's a huge if the export market for hydrogen actually takes off, and that's not something that's going to happen in the short to medium term. There are so many issues we still have to work through, whether it's hydrogen carriers, whether it's port design, whether it's bunkering, whether it's liquid hydrogen, for commercially viable hydrogen export to happen. Then we have got time in the short to medium term to work out how we want this industry to be within the next 10, 15, 20 years. Are we going to see Scotland, because you and I are sitting in Scotland, become a hydrogen superpower? Well, yes, but we can either export a molecule or we can sell a molecule locally. We can't do both. And where's the value add to Scotland or any other country? Is it looking after your own economy first, or actually exporting that molecule? And that's an economic, technical, and socio-political debate that we have to have done and undertaken before we can come to the question of hydrogen superpowers. Where is the value add to hydrogen? Is it actually decarbonising your local market, or is it exporting and decarbonising somebody else's market?
If I may, Nigel, Mirela here. Do you hear me? Yes.
Yes, perfect.
Okay. I'm going to stay more on the technology side, and I would like also to get back to your first question. And indeed, like I mentioned shortly in my presentation, we didn't work much on other means of transporting hydrogen from A to B, or in which form. Mainly we worked on compressed hydrogen, and compression combustion methods, different compressors, technologies for compression, decreasing the cost of that. But indeed now, as I said, also moving into the heavy duty transportation, we may have to move to other types of carriers, liquid maybe, but even ammonia, because you mentioned ammonia. I have not mentioned ammonia. We have only few projects, I would say 3 or 4, that I would say somehow linked to the ammonia. We looked at the ammonia and cracking ammonia and use ammonia on a PEM fuel cell. I have to say not very successful. Huh? And you know me, I'm honest. And that's why if we decide to go ammonia, I believe we may have to look again, and this is my personal opinion, we have to look again at the efficiency, at the overall efficiency of transporting hydrogen in the form of ammonia and then cracking back into hydrogen and use it in a PEM fuel cell. So rather, if we prefer to do that, we will have to think that we cannot use it after transporting it in a form of an ammonia in any type of fuel cell without losing in efficiency. And the more recent project we are looking right now is ammonia on ships, and there is maybe where it may make sense that we use it in the maritime sector, but with the high temperature fuel cell, where we can use ammonia directly and we don't have to transform it back into hydrogen and again into a fuel cell. So technologically speaking, where I prefer to say it's my comfort zone, this is how I would see ammonia as a carrier to transport hydrogen. Of course, science might contradict me, but yes, this is my opinion.
Thank you, Mirela. So I think absolutely there are many options for moving hydrogen around, and I don't think we've explored all of the options and all the opportunities yet. All I would add about the ammonia opportunities is that very recently there's been a project proposal for a green ammonia production in Orkney, so that's hot off the press. So we'll see if that one moves forward. So I think we now need to wrap up. I would like to thank all of the speakers for taking part. We've still got a massive list of questions, so we'll see if we can actually cover any of those off after the session. Thank you very much for taking part. And I'd like to thank the team at All Energy Decarbonise for hosting this. And I'd like to thank all of you who've taken part. I don't know if we've got anywhere near 900 still listening in, but thank you very much for taking part. I've been told that there will be further webinar sessions on this or related topics, so it's certainly not the end. And I think that the whole approach that Kerry-Ann talked about, which is starting to change our behaviours and do more by web, absolutely, this has to be a way to keep moving forward. So thank you very much for taking part, and stay safe.
Thank you. Stay safe. Thank you.